Good evening. You are watching ReNews in English. I'm Sona Tumanyan. The U.S.'s peacemaking aspirations and its pro-Armenian approach have reached the Senate and the House of Representatives. United States Senator Josh Hawley has introduced to the Senate and Congressman Riley Moore to the House of Representatives resolutions condemning the persecutions of Christians, including the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh Armenians by Azerbaijan. A statement released by the Armenian National Committee of America notes that the bipartisan resolutions reflect and reinforce the growing recognition in Congress of the existential threats facing Armenian Christians, particularly the 2020-2023 ethnic cleansing of Artsakh by Azerbaijan. According to the organization's executive director Aram Hamparian, the resolutions also address the rights of Christians living in Turkey and Syria, emphasizing that the Armenian Christian population in those countries continues to face systematic persecution. The resolutions by Josh Hawley and Riley Moore call on President Donald Trump to prioritize the protection of the persecuted Christians as part of the United States foreign policy agenda. Following Prime Minister Pashinyan's press conference, it was unequivocally confirmed that there is a desire to become an EU member. So what does this entail? What will be the procedure? And what is Europe's stance? Simon Hovanesyan has studied the topic and discussed it with experts.
Will we be in the European Union in 20 years, as Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan wants? This is a dangerous game, says economist Agassi Tavadyan, citing additional facts. Over the last 7 years, exports to the EAEU, Eurasian Economic Union, have increased 5-fold, while exports to the European Union have decreased by 10%.
By the time your product reaches the European Union market, transportation costs are so high that the price doubles. To lower those transport costs, you would need, for example, the Turkish border to be open. In other words, one must clearly understand that the road to the European Union runs through Turkey, first and foremost. And here a question arises. Okay, with all these obstacles, isn't it better not to think about abolishing customs duties, but rather to supply a product for which tariffs are not a factor? For example, Argentine wine is very well represented in the EU market, despite the fact that Argentina is not a member of the European Union.
The expert also notes that the competition is great and the standards are high, and we must meet them. Speaking about the percentage decrease in exports from Armenia to the European Union, Arman Yeloyan, chairman of the National Assembly's Standing Committee on European Integration, says it is linked to the Russia-Ukraine war. He also explains why the European Union is interested in our region.
They strive to share their success, so to speak, in exchange for getting predictability, predictable neighbors, a predictable environment, and so on.
He says that before joining the European Union, countries carry out reforms that are beneficial for the country in any case, as was the case with Georgia. Our processed agricultural products and meat products can reach the European market, says Yeloyan, stressing that the market needs to be targeted. Wine shouldn't be sold, for example, in Italy, where they have been in that business for hundreds of years. Instead, it can be successfully sold in the Baltic countries. But can Europe solve our country's food demand issue? For example, about 70% of the wheat for Armenia's domestic consumption is imported, mostly from Russia.
We need to solve the issues of energy security and water security, and also grain security, which we also lack, as the amount of grain we have is not enough for us. Agriculture has declined by about 16–17% over the last 7 years, which means we're not paying proper attention to our agriculture. These are issues that, yes, need attention, but we're talking about a long-term perspective, aren't we? We're not talking about next year. The solution to your question lies in certain long-term strategies. Yes, naturally, if we were to make such a decision right now, for next month, then yes, a problem could arise in the supply chain, which would lead to some price instability in the market. That's why we are doing everything very calmly, in a balanced way, measuring 1,000 times and cutting once.
The economist believes that hasty, uncalculated statements are being made, which is dangerous. Yeloyan, however, believes that the EAEU is an economic structure, and from that perspective, our statements cannot have any impact. The political aspect is another matter. Will the road to Europe be smooth, or as the economists suggested, do dark and cold years await us? The question remains on the agenda. Simon Hovanesyan, Levon Voskanyan, Mikrichik Hachatrian, David Yegyazaran, ReOpen Media.
Syunik is the backbone of Armenia. However, it is not only Armenia that benefits from what Syunik has to offer. For neighboring Iran, the spot of Armenia is of great importance, conditioned by a geographical location. My colleague Narine Ghukasyan presents an extensive look at the topic in the form of a report.
The Syunik province, with its geographical position, holds immense importance not only for Armenia but also for neighboring Iran, with which it shares a border that has millennia of civilizational context. Against this backdrop, Syunik has another strategic significance for Armenia. The province's metal mines are one of the most important foundations of the country's economy and constitute a key sector for exports. According to economist Soren Parsyan, until 2022, the export of mining products accounted for about 38% of our total exports.
It has been one of the main sectors bringing in foreign currency, and the metal mines have supplied Armenia with foreign currency, which has allowed us to stabilize our exchange rate within the economy.
Syunik, one of the most sparsely populated provinces, is also considered a major employer. The mining enterprises provide high-paying jobs right in Syunik, Soren Parsyan recalls, and emphasizes that these companies supply raw materials to thousands of organizations not only in Armenia but also beyond its borders.
The mining enterprises are the driving force for Syunik's economy and for a number of sectors in Armenia that service the mining industry.
If Armenia has not yet succeeded in building an export-oriented economy, then perhaps the powerful mining enterprises of Syunik, located in Kajaran, Kapan, and Adarak, could stimulate the development of the processing industry. Mining is very important in the structure of our economy, emphasizes economist David Ananyan.
Looking to the future, as we change the economic structure, we must also be able to introduce economic value chains into Armenia that are based on the mining sector.
And the goal of all this is singular, says Ananyan, to finally transform from an exporter of raw materials into a country that exports finished products, or at the very least, semi-finished goods. Armenia is rich in non-ferrous metals, copper, molybdenum, zinc, aluminum. In terms of the distribution of at least molybdenum and copper, Armenia's reserves are estimated to be over 500 million tons. About 90% of them are located right in Syunik, within that same triangle, Kapan, Kajaran, and Agarak.
Regarding copper, we must clearly realize that the demand for it is going to increase, at least until 2035-2040. This means that today's technologies and the predicted technological progress over the next 10-15 years are not going to change so drastically as to cause a decrease in the demand for copper.
Why has Armenia only been able to export raw copper over the last 3 decades? The reasons are not only subjective, but also objective.
Yes, over 30 years we have not succeeded in forming an export-oriented economy. Because to have an export-oriented economy, the necessary natural conditions must also be present. There have also been obstacles, for example, at least 2 closed borders.
According to The Economist, the main obstacle has been the political climate, because financial resources were needed to diversify the industry, make it export-oriented, and import potential production chains into Armenia. However, Armenia has not been able to afford such a luxury over these years.
Major reforms needed to be implemented over a 10-15-year span, but typically, over the past 30 years, the political authorities have been preoccupied with re-election every 4 to 5 years.
This means that when the political leadership changes every 4 to 5 years, short-term reforms do not have a long lifespan, and as a result, the economy suffers. Ananyan notes that to transform into an exporter of finished products, it was necessary to develop and implement strategic programs for the balanced development of the economy, creating factories throughout the entire republic.
Syunik's potential, yes, has not been utilized in as much as we have remained an exporter of raw materials. We haven't done it. From an economic standpoint, Syunik is the backbone of our future industry.
The Economist asserts that to ensure and achieve a sustainably developing economy, the development of strategic programs is a pressing issue, especially in Syunik. Narine Ghukasyan, ReOpen Media.
Let's turn to the official news. The Prime Minister of Armenia will leave for Russia on a 2-day working visit. The government reports that the Prime Minister will participate in an international conference on the protection of nature and the environment in the Altai Republic of the Federation. Deputy Prime Minister Meher Grigoryan and U.S. Ambassador to Armenia Christina Quinn discussed regional developments and exchanged views on the possibilities of unblocking communications in the region. Recently, the National Assembly passed a bill on the nationalization of the electric networks of Armenia, and today it became known that businessman Samvel Karapetyan and his family have won an urgent arbitration case they initiated against the government. The Karapetyan family initiated the case at the Arbitration Institute of the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce in accordance with the procedure established by the 1995 Agreement on the Promotion and Protection of Investments between the governments of Armenia and Cyprus. A representative of the Armenian government also participated in the proceedings. The emergency arbitrator appointed by the Stockholm Arbitration Institute has ordered the Republic of Armenia to refrain from applying the provisions of the law on energy and the law on the Public Services Regulatory Commission adopted in relation to the electric networks of Armenia Company, as well as from further steps to expropriate the ENA Company. The arbitrator deemed it necessary to apply urgent interim measures as the actions of the Republic of Armenia raise serious doubts about their compliance with the existing agreement on the mutual protection of investments between Armenia and Cyprus. It is noted that the decision of the emergency arbitrator is binding on the government of the Republic of Armenia. There is no shortage of news reports confirming the escalation of Russian-Azerbaijani tensions in Yekaterinburg. Another businessman of Azerbaijani origin named Elvin Shugarev has been arrested. He was involved in the operation of an underground workshop for the production and bottling of counterfeit alcoholic beverages in Pervaralsky district. Incidentally, all of this is happening as Ukraine and Azerbaijan are laying deeper foundations for their diplomatic relations. The ambassador of Ukraine to Azerbaijan, Gusiev, has announced that Ukraine and Azerbaijan are preparing documents for the construction of 4 social facilities in Irpin. Among them are a sports school and an art school. The diplomat also noted the expansion of humanitarian initiatives. Since 2022, more than 300 Ukrainian children have undergone rehabilitation treatment in Azerbaijan. Turkey and Azerbaijan have signed yet another of their hundreds of memorandums. A meeting between the defense ministers of Turkey and Azerbaijan, Yasar Güler and Zakir Hasanov, took place in Istanbul. During the negotiations, the parties discussed the current state and development prospects of cooperation between the two countries in the military and military-technical spheres. During the meeting, the parties signed a memorandum of understanding on strengthening mutual military security. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a major trade deal with Japan, which he considers one of the biggest in history. As part of the deal, Japan will invest $550 billion in the U.S., creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. Let's listen to Trump.
But I just signed the largest trade deal in history, I think maybe the largest deal in history, with Japan. And that was done with Japan. They had their top people here, and we worked on it long and hard, and it's a great deal for everybody. I always say it has to be great for everybody. It's a great deal. A lot different from the deals in the past, I can tell you that. But we're doing really well as a country. We're strong. We have a lot of money flowing in. The tariffs are kicked in better than anybody other than me and a few of the people in the room thought could happen, Howard and Scott. And I just want to thank you. You've been unbelievable allies, because you're really allies. That's what you've been, and we appreciate it. Some were very difficult.
Incidentally, the 47th U.S. president also did not hesitate to boast about powerful weaponry. The remarks of U.S. President Donald Trump during his meeting at the White House with his Philippine counterpart, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., are noteworthy.
We need ammunition. We're going to end up in a few months, we'll have more ammunition than any country has ever had. We're going to have more missiles than any country has ever had. We're going to have all the speedy missiles. We'll have the speedy ones, the slow ones, the accurate ones, the ones that are slightly less accurate. We have everything. But we will have more ammunition than any country has ever had. It's very important to me.
Yesterday, another of Trump's decisions also became known. Washington is leaving UNESCO. The U.S. has serious reservations about the organization's ideology and direction. The U.S. is not particularly in favor of the pro-Palestinian and pro-Chinese policy, and the White House notes that the U.S. president will always advance his country's interests. Tammy Bruce has also spoken on this topic. Let's listen.
Continued involvement in UNESCO is not in the national interest of the United States. UNESCO works to advance divisive social and cultural causes and maintains an outsized focus on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, a globalist ideological agenda for international development at odds with our America First foreign policy. UNESCO's decision to admit the, quote, State of Palestine, end quote, as a member state is highly problematic, contrary to U.S. policy, and contributed to the proliferation of anti-Israel rhetoric within the organization. Continued U.S. participation in international organizations will focus on advancing American interests with clarity and conviction. Based on President Trump's executive order, continued participation in international organizations is under review.
Iran will continue uranium enrichment but has no aspirations to obtain nuclear weapons, the president of the Islamic Republic, Masoud Pezeshkian, declared on the Al Jazeera television channel. He added that renouncing nuclear weapons is their political, religious, humanitarian, and strategic position, and called the destruction of the nuclear program an illusion because our capabilities are in the minds of our scientists, not in the facilities. The topic of a Trump-Putin meeting in China has also been discussed in Washington. Trump has announced that he might visit China, but specific dates have not yet been decided. It is also unclear whether or not a Putin-Trump meeting is planned as part of that visit. By the way, the Russian-Ukrainian negotiations took place in Istanbul this evening. More details to follow. David Genjan is once again following the pulse of the world.
During the night, Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles carried out a massive attack on the Rostov region, targeting the cities of Novocherkassk and Shakhty. In Novocherkassk, 3 people were injured. The attacks caused fires, damage to cars, and traffic jams near the railway station. Russia's air defense systems shot down 33 drones, 11 of them in the Rostov region. Fires and damage were recorded in the Radionovo-Nesvetaysky and Myasnikovsky districts, but there were no fatalities. In the past 24 hours, at least 85 people have been killed by Israeli strikes in the Gaza Strip. Another 10 people were killed in strikes in the north of the enclave and in Beit Laicha, with numerous others injured. Since October 2023, Israel's military operations in Gaza have led to more than 59,100 deaths, mostly women and children, destroying infrastructure and causing a severe food shortage. Cases of child deaths from starvation have already been recorded in Gaza. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned that the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip has reached a breaking point due to food shortages, famine, and mass destruction. He noted that Israel's military operations, including displacement orders in Deir al-Balah, are deepening the crisis. Guterres condemned the obstruction of humanitarian aid delivery, emphasizing that the system is on the verge of collapse. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has declared that Netanyahu and his network of villains have long surpassed Hitler in their barbarism. Even in Europe during the Holocaust, such inhumane images did not emerge as they have in Gaza, he wrote on social media. Anyone with even a drop of human dignity cannot accept, remain silent, or agree with this cruelty. Everyone who remains silent about the genocide in Gaza becomes an accomplice to the crimes against humanity committed by Israel. We will not be silent, the Turkish president noted, calling on the international community to unite around humanity. Let us all stand together against this savagery, he noted. On Tuesday, the Syrian Investigative Committee announced that 1,426 civilians and military personnel were killed and another 20 are missing as a result of clashes in coastal areas in March 2025. A fragile ceasefire is currently in place in Syria.
A large fire has broken out in occupied Artsakh, according to Azerbaijani media. Forests and pastures near Akna and Martagerd are burning, and the fire is spreading to adjacent areas. Fire brigades are working at the scene. What can go wrong will go wrong, and who knows, was his death wrong or right? But there are thousands of hearts that are broken now because rockstar Ozzy Osbourne left us at the age of 76. He spoke about himself like this: I'm about caring, I'm about people, and I'm about entertaining people. I'm a family man, a husband, a father. I have been a lot of other things over the years. He was an innovator in music world. In the 80s and 90s, he had occasional UK top 40 hits, including Buck at the Moon and Perry Mason. He eventually hit #1 in 2003 with Changes, a duet with his daughter Kelly. He was also called a Prince of Darkness, and let me add his famous words. I have a saying: never judge a book by its cover. I say that because I don't even know who Ozzy is. I wake up a new person every day. May he rest in peace. And for more updates, follow us on YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, X, and Facebook. Daily news and full coverage are available on our official website. I'm Sona Tumanyan. Stay informed with ReNews.